It's like you put all this. It's like, where are you putting your energy?
Right.
And now, like, my goal is just putting energy into things I either like or things that I'm passionate about. And if I don't care about it, I'm not going to do it.
So it's like, again, you know, this is a guy who's got a new project every month, and he's like, if I don't care about it, I'm not going to do it. But it's like, you do constantly try to do stuff.
I mean, that's a great place to be, and
Josh has always been about a fake it till you make it guy, but this is part of the reason we started having the falling out. If you'll remember, like, he was like buying all his Twitter followers and stuff, that's doing all these follow for follow programs. We were like, dude, we would make fun of anybody doing this. Like, we would 100% make fun of anybody doing this. All these Twitter followers he bought, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. If you follow 7,000 people and 7,000 people follow you, it's not impressive, is it?
People fucking respect you. That's just my opinion. And I'm also the kind of dude where that's never worked for me in any other facet of my life. When I got into corporate America, I was hated by everyone.
Corporate America. He was a district retail manager for Crocs, and he acts like he was in boardrooms every day with briefcases full of saltine crackers.
So, like, even recently, like, there are people that I was friends with in the LA comedy community.
Honestly, the one thing that drove Josh and I apart in a personal life, because we were probably best friends for a while. He was after this girl named Netta, who's his girlfriend now. And for like 6 months, over 6 months, she strung him along. It was pissing him off. She would spend the night but not do anything with him. She would tell him it's never going to happen. She doesn't find him attractive, put him down, all this shit. And as a good friend, I would take his side with that and be like, she's a bitch. You need to, like, stop worrying about this chick. He finally, you know, wears her down or whatever. She comes around. She becomes his girlfriend. And now it's fucking awkward because he tells her that I don't like her and I don't think they should be together. He tells her all this stuff. So now it's like, okay, so you told your girlfriend now that your best friend doesn't like her. Well, now it's awkward and weird. And she's catty and passive aggressive around me. So now it's not comfortable, you know? So I decide I'll just wait this relationship out. Only little do I know, your self-esteem is so low and you were headed down a path of self-destruction that would pretty much stop you from getting women for years. So, you know, look, did I do everything right by Josh Denny? 100% no. 100% no. We went pretty hard on him at the end of 2014 and 15. Just, we made a t-shirt of his face, making fun of it and all his lies. But again, this guy compounded lies on lies on lies. Everything from being in a plane crash to just personal stories about his family and stuff. Like, so much shit. I can't even... Like, listeners were calling him out on stuff. He was going around behind my back telling listeners that he was a real comic doing real shit and I was playing podcast. It's like, again, for 11 years I've made a living from this show. Like, I don't have to do anything else. And for 11 years that's been true. I've never driven Uber. Never applied for another job. So I don't know where all the hatred came from. And again, I saw the receipts from all this stuff. It was insane. So we all have our different memory, but you know, the whole thing why I was having trouble having him on the show because he was turning into this super weird soft boy. Remember, he's like, I'm allergic to chicken because my blood data shows. He was reading The Art of War, which I'm not saying is a bad thing to read, but like, he was becoming all soft and like networky and like, hey, you just got to follow people to get follows. You know, you got to put it out there and it'll come back. He was getting all real, you know, soft boy, cuckish, karma-ish. And it was like, this is kind of stuff we used to make fun of. So it was like weird to have him doing that. But you know, like he was, you know, getting into yoga and shirts that don't fit.
A lot of my friends open up for Jeff on the road.
Yeah.
I don't not talk to them.
I don't know. And listen, like I can also tell somebody like, yeah, I don't know that guy and I've never really met him or chatted with him, but like I don't want to either.
Yeah. Like,
there's nothing about that person that goes like I've met Jeff many times.
Yeah.
And Jeff does the same thing with me that Brian Callen does. Brian Callen was the first comic I opened for on the road.
This is insane. I can't listen to all this.
Chicago at a club called Terry is now a genre of what we do. And it's like, nobody's going to give you a fucking show. One of the best pieces of advice, I don't fucking size what other people are doing in their career. Like, nobody's writing about what you're doing. There's no buzz.
It's about me
press,
again.
Right? Go focus on that. Go focus
again. You know, he's confused with like, hey, I'm getting press. I'm making controversial tweets. People are talking about me. It's like, yeah, I'm just over here making a living at comedy. So that's what I'm doing and have been doing, by the way, consistently and steadily. Playing podcasts, as you call it. That hurt my wrist. So, you know, yeah, you've had some higher highs. You've certainly had some lower lows, too. Didn't you do a GoFundMe for your rent while simultaneously ordering the largest pizza available to man? Don't you do a lot of Uber driving and stuff? Don't you live in the apartment that I lived in 10 years ago? Creep. Moved into my little apartment. He literally sleeps in the room I used to podcast in. It's sad. It's a windowless hovel. They had better apartment units in the building. For same price or less, he wasn't even interested in seeing them. Must be where Patrick sleeps.
There's this weird thing in the space now where people think that commentary is now a genre of what we do. And it's like, nobody's going to give you a fucking show.
Let me just tell you something. I love this. Like, commentary is not a part of what we do. It's like, oh, really? I mean, even go back to the 90s to Tough Crowd. What are you talking about? The whole thing, the whole point of America's Got Talent or
don't put negative.
What was the original the Ralphie May reality show?
Hey, you know how you
Dat Fan.
I hate that guy too. Let's work together on something. Like that's
come on.
I mean,
last comic standing.
Yeah, well, if it's entertaining.
Oh, thank you for the birthday cake whiz.
Like the Vegas comedy scene, which seems to be a real hotbed of like.
I stopped doing Nobody Likes Onions when I felt like the show just became about talking shit about other comedians. And a lot of it was talking shit about me.
Now, look, I mean, he's such a fucking hypocrite. The show is always talking shit about other comedians, from Dane Cook to Fortune Feimster. We LOL'd about other comedians all day, all the time. Liar. When the gun got turned on you, you couldn't handle it. Just like Johnny B. Just like Johnny B. So, you know, this is such a fucking lie. The show changed.
It was like,
no, you choose to be gay. You choose to not want to be a part of this show anymore. Those are both Josh's beliefs.
Criticizing things that I was doing or criticizing things I was working on or minimizing.
Right. You were soft boying. You were buying followers on Twitter and getting mad if we called you out about it.
I get negativity whether I look for it or not.
It finds you.
It fucking finds me. So I don't need.
Finds all of us. You're not special.
Out and voluntarily put myself in front of it more than I'm going to get naturally. Right. Like I'm a dude that just like, for whatever reason, when I walk in a room,
for me,
like, and I don't understand why. And I stopped trying to change that a decade ago.
You have an aggressive, dishonest energy.
You know, so I stopped doing NLO when it became like Redbar, when it became like, we're just going to fucking talk. We can't,
same guy.
And I failed at running a comedy club. So now I'm going to create this empire of shitting on comedy, shitting on comedians.
And that's the Redbar guy.
Yeah. Mike David. Yeah. He attempted to be a stand-up comic, failed at that. tried to run a comedy club, embezzled money from his fucking partners. They locked him out of the business. They sued each other. I don't know what happened to that, but
A lot of
anyway,
truth.
He dedicated his life to shitting on comedians, and I'm one of his favorite targets. And Patrick was like trying to copy that model of like, oh, I'm going to get all this.
That's so insane. That's so insane. You can count on one hand the number of people we've ever deep dived into. And guess what, buddy? Josh Denny ain't one of them. No one's ever been concerned about what you're doing over here. We've messed with Crazy Joe. We've messed with Ty Rivera. And that's about it for deep motherfucking long-term dives. No one's talking about Josh Denny. Nobody. Here come the chats. Here we go with the Josh Denny. Virtue signaling, yes. 100%. He stopped doing NLO when it started being like Redbar, but then he went on Redbar to try to talk about Patrick and got duped by Mike twice, by the way. This, people won't tell you this, and I don't know if I still have the chats. I've reached out to Josh in 2016 and apologized for being this is 100% true. I used to be a much grumpier, unhappier person 10 years ago. I didn't like myself. I didn't like anything about my life. And I took it out on other people. 100%. 100%. Now, I was good to people in a lot of ways, but in a lot of ways I wasn't. Josh is one of those people I was good to in a lot of ways. Perhaps in every way, not perfect. Jim the Walrus. No, I never did a deep dive on that guy. We just watch his show. I mean, he's a nut, but I don't really know much about him. Same as Josh. The only reason I know where Josh lives is because it's my old apartment and he films podcasts with his kitchen as his background. But look, 100%. I have not treated people well in the past. It's been a detriment to me, both personally and from a career standpoint. And I count them as lessons learned. And, been able to make amends and come back from a lot of those relationships that didn't work out. But also, there's a lot of just shitty people in comedy where the fault usually lies somewhere between both parties, and don't be surprised if you just have a lot of pieces of shit. It's just kind of the biz. He stopped doing comedy when he's like Redbar, but then he went on Redbar and got duped by Mike. Literally makes no sense. He comes off like a jilted lover. Yeah, that is true. Little bit jilty. How do I get this? Hold on, sorry. Ooh. If Josh thinks I've gone after him or have torn into him, he's out of his fucking mind. I tried to make up with this guy 2 fucking times over text. Both times he threw me under the bus. Both times he tried to go talk shit about me on Mike's podcast. And both times they ended up just making fun of him until he fucking left. It's like, hey, idiot, I was actually your friend. I was actually trying to fucking reach out and make up with you. Actually. You dummy. You're so full of shit. But where's your corporate America experience, Patrick? Oh, yeah. Good points.
Or doing commentary on what other people are doing. You don't have a brand anymore. You're the news.
Right.
You're the news of comedy. And that's not interesting to me.
I have Josh telling me I don't have a brand. When again, every 3 to 9 months, this guy has a new podcast. What is the Josh Denny brand? The guy with the racist tweets? The guy who flip-flops about abortion every 2 months? Now you're like this radical right-wing guy. What are you? What is your brand? Seriously, you're out of your mind with this shit. If there is anything to the Josh Denny brand, it's inconsistency and lies, dishonesty, hullabaloo.
And I love that those people can sit around all day. It's easy to sit back and shit. It's like the Man in the Arena, the poem. People can sit back and shit on things all day.
The poem.
Day long, but if you don't take any risk and put anything of your own out there to be critiqued or judged or otherwise,
So again, just talking out his ass. He has no idea what I do, what I'm working on, what I'm coming at. Like this, just because I don't constantly start new projects. Also, I don't brag about the shit I have going on nearly as much as every other comic. I'm not doing it for you. So you wouldn't know what I'm doing if it fucking smacked you in the face. Carry on though and tell me how I'm working on my brand.
Shut the fuck up.
See, to me,
like imagine telling another comic to shut the fuck up. This is a freedom of speech guy, by the way. It's like, I would never tell you to shut the fuck up. We don't talk about you like at all.
Like the show was fucking picking up, and it was, we would do live shows that have tons of viewers, and then we did some live.
He takes credit for this almost here. You know what I mean?
Stand-up gigs, a ton of people came out.
He didn't even come out to most of them.
We had a great time. We really
brought Cornell Reed to Indianapolis, brought Cornell Reed to a show in London, Germany.
In the early days of the show was one of the most fun things.
He says the early days of the show, like you weren't there till year 6, motherfucker. You weren't there for the early days of the show. It was so big I could make a living on it before I moved to LA. That's how it worked. You didn't make shit happen. What are you talking about? Everything you've done since we split up has failed, has sizzled out. I'm still standing, fatter than I've ever been, looking like a big survivor. Gigantic food. Like, what are you like, dude? Seriously, man. I don't know if I've ever said Josh will never be back on the show again, but I don't know how I can respect a dude who can't even see. And by the way, again, I was a different person then, 100%. Like I was. But again, I've tried to apologize to him 2 times sincerely from the bottom of my fucking heart. And he used it and went on to Redbar and said that, and tried to get laughs out of it. Meanwhile, it's like one of the things he said was like, because I genuinely, when he got that show, I told him like, congrats, man. Like you wanted a show, you got a show. Like he's like, Patrick only fucking messaged me when I got a TV show to try to get something out of it for himself, which is clearly backed up by the way he thinks, this was all transactional, everything I've ever done. But I want you to think about that for a minute. His show is called Ginormous Foods. It was basically a rip-off template of Guy Fieri, Diners, Drive-Ins, Dives. He comes into town. He walks into a restaurant, talks with the people about what they like about the restaurant, goes in the back, watches them make some crazy food, comes out and shares it with the people in the restaurant. That's the show. Where did I think I would fit into that? Oh, did he have a guest comedian on every week? No. There was no. What are you talking about? What? Like, oh, he was just trying to get in on my show. It's like, was I? What are you talking about? What part do you have guests on, dummy? And let's make it very clear. Josh has never, ever been a working comedian. I will say this again, 100%. Josh Denny has never, ever made a living not for one tax year, doing stand-up comedy. He's never worked any of the fucking clubs I'm ever at or been to in my life, from coast to goddamn coast. Well, maybe I don't actively work a club near you, but I've probably been to a club near you. Not Josh. He toured around out of the back of a car for a year in Minneapolis. I drug him to do some guest spots, which got him a couple feature gigs at 2 or 3 clubs. He's self-funded trips and bought out rooms at about 5 clubs. And that's Josh's comedy career. That's it. I'm not making fun of him. That's it. That's it. He's never made a living at it. So this sage wisdom, I'm sorry. The most money you've ever made in the business, even tangentially, is basic cable money. And you had to go back to driving Uber when that dried up. So preach to me more about what I'm doing over here playing comedy.
My friendships are based off, like, if I quit comedy tomorrow, I should still be
again, there's probably a deeper discussion to be had about our friendship and what really made it fall apart. But the fact that he's just completely oblivious to anything he did is insane.
Another thing before I get off the Patrick thing.
Two
guys I really like and respect that caught on to Patrick before I did. And
here we go.
Don't fuck with that guy. Ryan Sickler and Tom Segura. And Tom a lot over the years. I think he thought Patrick and I were still tight or whatever, but we did a show at the store together right before the shutdown. We did Tripoli's Comedy Chaos together.
Okay.
And Tom and I were talking, and he goes, do you remember, like, in 2011, I came to Patrick and asked him to help me with your mom's house with me and Christina? And he was like, I'm too busy with my own podcast. I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to, like, he was asking him simple things of, like, what equipment should I get? And how do I run it? And how do I say
this? Is such an insane statement.
Patrick didn't want to help him. Patrick's answer to Tom, what Tom told me was, yeah, I helped fucking Marin with all that shit. And Marin's never even had me on his show. And he's like, so I don't do that anymore.
This is craziness. Now, look, I don't know how me not helping Tom Segura set up his podcast would be transactional. Like, see, Patrick was just in it to get stuff, not to help other people. It's like, I would have helped them set up anything they wanted to help set up. They helped me so much. It did so much for me. Tom always came and did my podcast. These were complex misunderstandings, 100%. Again, I'm sure I was a dick at some point. I'm sure I disrespected these guys in a way. It was not intentional, and it certainly wasn't. This makes it sound downright malicious. So, you can say all that and try to frame it all like this. That's not what happened at all.
I don't help my friends set up podcasts that can become bigger than mine. And it was just like, it's such a limiting.
I don't help my friends set up podcasts that could become bigger than mine. Like, as if. What are you talking about?
Shitty. And Tom was like a good friend of Patrick's, to the sense where Tom was like,
ask how many people I've helped set up podcasts for.
Getting him spots around town when he first moved here from Florida, getting him up at shows like that a person who just
we were friends
moved here would never be on. And
he's so insane. He doesn't understand anything. He's like, he was getting up at shows he'd never be on. It's like, bitch, I laid the groundwork for 5 years as the house MC at the Tampa Improv, making friends with all these people and cultivating relationships so that when I came to LA, I could walk into any club and somebody there would know me. You have no idea what you're talking about. He would never be getting up. You've never done comedy for a living. Ever.
And there's just like so much lack of gratitude and shit. And he was like, same thing. Like, he got shitty with Bert Kreischer when Bert started using other LA comics as his opener. He was like, oh, I'm supposed to be.
That isn't true. I was never Bert's main opener anyway. This is such ridiculous horse shit. Imagine me starting getting crappy with Bert Kreischer. I've known Bert 17 years. Again, Just texted with him a couple weeks ago. I don't have any hard feelings for Bert Kreischer. This is so insane. He never knew any of these guys. He had to beg, please let me come on the Jim Norton podcast, please. Please let me come on with you and Bill Burr, please. I cultivated all those relationships. Nobody else. What are you talking about?
Your opener. We're both from Tampa. And he was just like, so he's had like
He thinks that I really said that. I'm supposed to be your opener. We're both from Tampa. Wow.
falling outs with all these people that are really good comics and really good people and really well respected because they're not shitty to people. And so it's sort of like when you look at the people who all agree about like, fuck that guy, I start to look at that group and go, that's better company. So I'm obviously.
So again, go get Bert Kreischer and Tom Segura and Sickler to see if they go, fuck that guy, and tell you that I get Tom Segura in a room to tell you that I wouldn't help set up his podcast. That's so insane. And again, if that's Tom's interpretation of it, there was a horrible misunderstanding. That's so insane.
Not wrong when I go like, yeah, that dude's got some really shitty self-serving ways of looking at the world, and he's been disrespectful and shitty to all these really good people who, by the way, have all gone on to have monumentally more success than him.
Well, that's the thing is
so like, look at the scorecard, motherfucker. The people that don't like you and don't associate with you have had television shows, massive fucking podcasts like Sickler, or they're multi-millionaire arena comics now like Tom.
I mean, I will stick up for Patrick in this sense. Like, I've helped people out. Kind of like, I haven't gotten anyone to Marin's level on my help, but I'm definitely more guarded in terms of who I help now in the few areas that I can help, because I've helped a few people, gotten nothing out of it. And like, I recently had someone from Supernova, which is, the outdoor.
The big show. That's the show now in LA.
That's the show right now.
That's the show.
And they asked me for help to get in at the Comedy Store. And I didn't even get back to them. I'm like, you guys have never played Supernova.
Yeah.
And now you're.
And it's not a credential thing, because there's people who have less credits than you have done Supernova.
And if you have less credits than me,
it's impressive.
You have very few credits.
Yeah.
But I'm like,
must be your first day.
Pretty close. But it's like the balls of this dude to sit there. It was, I guess, classifies as one of the bookers.
Get back to me.
You haven't even asked me. And you want me to get you in at the #1 club in the country? Like, that's like,
yeah.
So I'm
the balls on that. It's ridiculous.
So I understand almost. I don't know
again
the backstory between him and Segura, and
so
but I could almost, I could get into the mindset of why he was like, no, I helped Marin. He didn't help me.
Get out of town.
But
but this is my point. Helping Marin is not helping Tom. Like, this is the thing. Like, I'm not going to treat you shitty because other people have fucked me over.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a false narrative, though. Like, they're just both running with this thing that never happened. Like, I'm telling you right now, if Tom Segura thinks that I told him I would never help him set up his podcast, he's out of his mind. Like, that's so not true. And there's such a dissonance there between his idea of what happened and my idea. And again, I'm sure I'm to blame for something. 100%. I wasn't a happy person, but it's nowhere near what this is. Like, there's no, like I just never would have done that to one of my friends. Ever.
Like, that's a weird way to be.
Oh, no.
Agreed. That's why it should raise red flags with you. Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, that doesn't make sense. Tom had just gotten a fucking half hour on Comedy Central. Like, he was just starting to get some heat. Like, yeah, of course, it's a weird way to be, because I wasn't that way. That'd be insane.
To be guarded. But you can also just be like, yeah, I don't know about that yet. Or you can also be like, oh, yeah, I just wouldn't feel right doing that at this point. I don't know you well enough. Like, if that would be like if you came to me at this point in our friendship and said, hey, can you do this?
I don't know you well enough to help you set up a podcast.
Circumstantial, right? I wouldn't base that off of anything other than our relationship.
Right.
So he loves doing that. He loves taking a little grain of something he makes up and then extrapolating it out and go, look how nuts that guy is for all because of that thing. And it's like, yeah, but the
Like,
thing
that
you
doesn't make
said
sense.
isn't true.
And it's just like, so it's like that to me, and just knowing the situation is like, that isn't about your relationship with Mark or Tom.
Right.
It's about your fear that they'll have a better, bigger podcast than you. And that's not their fault or responsibility.
Right.
Like that's where you start to have
imagine. And again, Mark was the threat. You know, I honestly, like, when I moved to New York and Tom and I kind of weren't talking anymore, I wasn't following Tom. I'd see a Netflix special come out, I'd watch it. It's fucking hilarious. I had no idea how big his podcast was. I had no clue. I wasn't in this YouTube universe until last year. Like, I really, like, you know, don't pay attention and wasn't paying attention. Holy shit, I had no idea how big he'd gotten. No clue. And when I find out, there's certainly no jealousy there, dude. Like, these guys are crushing it. They figured it out. The next wave, 100%. Would I like to do the same? Sure. But, like, it's insane of you, and it shows more of your mindset. And again, I'm maybe 10 years older, so maybe I'm looking at it from a more mature way than you. Like, I know you think you're the big grown-up, but, you know, this is crazy. Josh put his bed in the old studio so he absorbed some of the residual podcast knowledge you left on the walls because he knew you wouldn't help him start his 15 podcast. Yeah, I don't know. Again, I was shitty to Josh at the end of our relationship. I didn't know how to handle it also, you know? Like, again, you badmouthed me to your now girlfriend. So, like, cool, where do we go from here? But I love this story that he tells himself, like, oh, that guy was he could have been something, but he burned Tom Segura. He wouldn't help Tom Segura set up the your mom's house. It's like, just like, what? What? Ugh. You're so dumb. Like, if you think that's what it is, and by the way, if you and Tom are so tight, how come you're not on your mom's house? These are all lies. These are all lies. These conversations didn't happen.